Tomorrow marks 5 years since George Floyd's death, and though his murder led to thousands of nationwide protests against police brutality, the country is now moving backwards when it comes to police reform. This week, Trump's Justice Department announced it would dismiss civil rights investigations into several local police departments, including those filed against two city departments, Louisville and Minneapolis, during the Biden administration. Calls to end qualified immunity for police officers have gone nowhere, as President Trump signed an executive order last month designed to, quote, strengthen and expand legal protections for police officers. It's a big shift from the justice Minnesota's attorney general called for after the guilty verdict in Floyd's murder.
We need true justice. That's not one case. That is a social transformation that says that nobody's beneath the law and no one is above it. This verdict reminds us that we must make enduring systemic societal change.
And we are joined now by the Attorney General of the great state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Attorney General Ellison, thank you for coming to the weekend. Look, the Justice Department rescinded the consent decree that was just signed, what was it, back in January with Minneapolis. They've done that, but talk about the practical effect. What impact will removing that consent decree actually have on Minneapolis?
Well, probably not too much, because the state of Minnesota, through the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, represented by the Attorney General's office, did sue the city of Minneapolis, and we achieved our own version of a consent decree. So we already have a program of, reducing, chokeholds, reducing high-speed chase, no-knock warrants, and we've had a number of reforms at the state level as well. So this is really more the symbol that it sends, which is that the DOJ is not a partner for cities and states when it comes to improving police-community relations, and that's really sad, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. On Friday, the New York Times, in a 5 years after Floyd, an article that they had. So why didn't much change over the last 5 years? Experts cite two reasons. First, lawmakers did not embrace all the proposed changes. Ohio, Minnesota, and Missouri, for example, rejected more than 98% of the proposals that came before the legislatures, according to the Brookings Institution. Then the murder rate rose in 2020 and 2021, and public sentiment shifted. Voters wanted the police to focus on crime. Attention to reform faded. Also, changes didn't go far enough to transform the nature of American policing. I would also add in there, you have to fix the culture, right? Because when you're talking about policing and black bodies, you can't just focus on the legislation. You have to fix the culture. So you say that we should still be hopeful. Why?
Well, because we're still breathing. We still are standing. I think that we should always be pushing forward. And cynicism, in my life's experience, Eugene, has never really achieved anything. The easiest thing in the world is to say nothing can be done, everything is terrible. Well, it's not great, but I'm still willing to fight for it. We did achieve some things. I don't know where they got that 98% number. I don't even, I didn't read that article, but I can tell you that we have had substantial changes in Minneapolis. Again, but even though we made those changes, we still had officer-involved deaths. So I'm not making the case for some sort of a panacea magic wand. I will say, though, that people are going to keep on pushing forward. People are going to continue to protest. And I believe we're going to achieve that justice that I pray for.
Attorney General, let's look at a Pew survey that was recently conducted. Public support for Black Lives Matter, it reached a high mark in June 2020, and around 67% of U.S. adults expressed support. But then by September 2020, it had gone down to 55%. And so then again, support went down in 2023 when around half of Americans said they supported the movement. Now it's kind of leveled off with around 52% of Americans supporting Black Lives Matter and another 45 saying they don't support. What do you make of these numbers 5 years after the murder of George Floyd?
Well, what I make of those numbers is that we do live in a period of backlash to a certain extent. What I make of those numbers is that we live in a time when, when you have a big thrust towards justice and a more inclusive society, people who don't want it, they're going to get busy too. And that's sort of how I would explain those numbers. But you know what? At the end of the day, people do want a good relationship between police and community. And that relationship is what fosters trust and has the effect of improving public safety and human and civil rights. So the case is still strong that if we take this issue seriously, we will have safer communities and we will have more constitutional societies which observe everyone's human and civil rights. I mean, look at all the civil rights cases, judgments that cities have to pay out, an enormous amount of money over the course of time. Money that could have been going for anything else. Look at the damage that civil unrest causes. Very expensive. It is not in the interest of our society to have these enduring problems between police and community. Unfortunately, President Trump has exacerbated the problem, but there are still people on the ground fighting to improve it every day, including police officers and citizens.
Attorney General, one real quick question. We have less than 30 seconds. There's the rumor and an effort out there to get a federal pardon for Derek Chauvin, the former police officer who murdered George Floyd. Just real quickly, do you think that will happen?
You know what? I've given up on wondering about it, Jonathan. If he does, he's just coming straight back to Minnesota to do the remainder of his 22.5-year sentence. It would not help Derek Chauvin. It would make his life worse, but I know that Trump doesn't care about that. In the meantime,